This is John McMurray of the Society for American Baseball Research, and I'm pleased to be speaking today with Dave Righetti for an oral history interview. Dave pitched in the major leagues from 1979 through 1995 for 5 teams, most notably with the New York Yankees. He would go on to serve as pitching coach for the San Francisco Giants for 18 seasons, where he coached for 3 World Series winning teams. And we are recording this interview with Dave's permission on May the 9th of 2024. And Dave, what got you interested in baseball?
Well, as a kid in the 60s growing up, I think my brother probably, he's a year ahead of me, Steve. He was 13 months older. So I guess watching him play some ball, and my dad, who was a former minor leaguer, played 13 years in the minor leagues. So there was some baseball in the house, but growing up as a 5-year-old or 6-year-old, it was just about everything. It was just, at that time, we lived on streets that were, brand new homes and a lot of empty lots. We had more fun playing in the dirt and playing combat and digging holes and throwing dirt clods and things like that. But sports came natural and seemed like fun. And that's where we started baseball. We played Pee Wee League together as 7-year-olds and never stopped. So from almost when I can remember, since a 7-year-old, I've had a uniform on.
Now, your dad, Leo, who was an infielder in the Yankee system in the 1940s, coached you on the finer points of the game. Where did you think you would, what position did you think you would play initially?
Well, we were in Little League. I'd play the outfield as a 9-year-old until, you stay on that team 4 years, 9, 10, 11, 12. So gradually I'm left-handed. So I'm thinking first base or the outfield has got to be it. And that's pretty much what I did. And I ended up doing some pitching. Why, I don't know. I just did it. They asked me to do it, and I tried it as a 10-year-old, but I didn't think anything of it other than, I got to play. When you're that age, you're just playing.
And tell us about Patty Cottrell, because he was a very instrumental figure in terms of a family friend, but also someone who was instrumental in getting you to the major leagues.
Yeah, Patty was a longtime scout, coach of Santa Clara. He had met my father in the war. He was a quartermaster for my dad. My dad was in the Coast Guard, in 1944, I believe. My dad left Bellarmine High School as a junior. And I think that's where he met Patty. And, almost 30 years later, I didn't really see him again. I knew of him because he coached at Santa Clara. And, he was just an influence because Bob Faggio was my dad's coach at Bellarmine, who was a famous high school baseball coach here in San Jose. And, if you were going to go to Santa Clara, you're a young kid, and it was like the big school on the block in our area. You knew who these people were by name, but they didn't come into my life until my senior year in high school. And I had a great arm, through in the outfield. I was played right field. And for whatever reason, my high school career was going to be over the next year. I was going to pitch some, but I knew I wasn't going to play the outfield much anymore. So I was just getting myself ready to go to business school and junior college and be an architect. And I said, in the meantime, my buddies were all going to San Jose Junior College, San Jose City. And I said, well, I'd like to go too. And that was within a couple of months after my high school ended, and we started winter ball practice, I guess, in JC. And I decided they asked me to pitch. And soon after that, 5 months later, I guess you could say, when the season was over, Patty Cottrell became a prominent member of my life because there was talks of the Texas Rangers, who he was a scout for, wanted to draft me.
And apparently Cottrell convinced the Rangers of your potential. They drafted you 10th overall in the January 1977 draft. How did you feel about going to Texas?
And I didn't care. I just, put on a uniform. My dad had played. You got to remember there was no TV then, not a lot of stuff going on. The major leagues was like a dream, but to play even as a minor leaguer, to me was quite a thrill. Our local team was the San Jose Bees, which was the Royals A-ball team. And of course, George Brett, we'd see Doug Bird, many other players, UL Washington. I mean, there's a lot of guys who went to the big leagues that came out of San Jose and the San Jose Bees. So, there was that excitement about being able to play on a field and have somebody ask you for your autograph or something. My gosh. But I'll tell you this story, so it'll be on the record, I guess, because we lost some people in our lives that no longer will be able to talk about this. So I've always not keep my mouth shut because I'm not hiding anything, but basically is how things used to be. So back then, there was a lot of pressure from outside groups. So people saying, we could sign you without going to the draft. And you sign this contract here and we'll send you here or there. And in my case with Texas, my brother was on the team and he was the best player at our team. Steve was our center fielder, formerly of the Toronto Blue Jays. Great. And Dave, so we had a lot of people following us just for not just that, but we had a few other guys who were going to get signed. But the Rangers actually told me, and Patty's the one that said it in our living room. He looked at me and he said, "We're not going to draft you if you don't sign, excuse me, we won't draft your brother." And I said, "What?" And that brought exclamation out of my father, who knew Patty well, but he basically told him that, you know what? And now I'm in a quandary. I got my brother there, my older brother, who I loved and wanted to watch him play. So now I got that burden on my back because I could have easily held out. I was still 17. And I knew in a few months I'd be a number one pick in the January draft and probably worth a lot more money than $12,500, which the Rangers were offering, believe it or not. But anyway, I'm not sure how many days passed. Patty shouldn't have done that, but he did. I didn't hold it against him, but I signed. I wanted my brother to play, and I just wanted to play pro ball. And I figured I'd turn around in a few years and have to go back to work anyway. I honestly felt that way. And I figured a few more $1,000 wasn't going to change my life then. But so I signed. And that was how Patty was instrumental in getting me to the Texas Rangers.
And you went to Asheville of the Class A Western Carolina League in 1977 and had a very successful season as a pitcher. You're 6'4". You have good command. You struck out roughly a batter an inning. And did you start to feel like your pitching career was taking off?
Well, I got a break. Didn't know it. This wasn't any strategic move, but when you drafted in January, you're ahead of the curve, so to speak, because most of the kids that went to spring training that year for the Rangers in 77, they were already on a team, but they had to go through spring training, and a lot of them had to go to rookie ball. In my case, when you leave a little bit early and sign in, like we ended up signing in May, I believe, we didn't have to go straight to rookie ball. We had a chance to go to A ball and make our mark. And if you do, you get to stay there instead of starting back in rookie ball. So that was my impetus. I really wanted to show well early so I could just stay there all year and finish the season out in Asheville.
Now, you got promoted to Double A, the Texas League in 1978, and in one of the more memorable games of your career, you set the record for most strikeouts in a Texas League game with 21 in a game against Midland, and that actually broke a record of San Antonio's Willie Mitchell, who struck out 20 more than nearly a century before. And what do you remember most about that game?
Well, a lot of things actually, because there were some people there that I still knew the rest, for the rest of my career. We were playing the Midland Cubs. We were in Tulsa. I had gotten a really break at the end of the 77 season. I got invited to Instruction League in Florida with the Rangers. And back then, Instruction League, they took big league prospects only. And so you had AA guys, AAA guys, big league guys, and you had big league coaches and AAA manager. For an A-ball guy, that was a big deal. So I got a great exposure, and I got very comfortable in my skin, knowing, okay, I was just hoping to go to AA. So in this case, I got hurt in Lakeland in one of my starts in spring training before that year. And I think I ended up rehabbing I had a groin injury, and I think I only had 9 starts, 11 total. 2 of them were like a rehab starts. But so I did well in those 9 starts. I was fortunate enough to make the All-Star team and averaged around 11 or 12 strikeouts a game. Had no idea about my stuff getting that much better. It was ironic, but you look back now, I never thought anything of it, but in a calendar year, I almost threw 250 innings my first year, starting with junior college season, immediately going to Asheville, pitching another 100 innings. So I'm well over 200 already. I went and started 5 more, and at least 5 more, because I was 5-0 in Instruction League. So I know I pitched another 30, 40 innings. And everybody was worried about your arm back then. Imagine that. The kids maybe throw 30 innings now, and I threw probably 230 minimum. And the next year, my fastball went from 87 to I rested at about 92. And so I had a new arm in a sense that I had to learn how to control. I got a little wild, but the first thing in that game, I remember there was a second baseman on their team by the name of Steve Macko. He's the only one I didn't strike out, which was fine. I was just trying to win a game. His dad, Joe, was the equipment manager for the Texas Rangers. So that was kind of cool, right? To play with. We lost Steve just a few years later with cancer. And that game was also Lee Smith was over on the other side, who I competed against forever and then coached with the Giants for at least a dozen years. But it was very hot. The night before, I was charting the game, and I was sitting up in the stands we didn't have a pitching coach on our team in AA that year. Frank Bullock was like a secondary coach, but we never threw bullpens or anything like that, or never got coached up like these kids do. But I sat in the stands with Dick Such, who was the roving pitching coordinator, and was talking to him the night before. And he just being around him the whole game kind of relaxed me. Unbeknownst to me, the next day I had this kind of ball game, and I was very excited about having it, of course. And we didn't win the ball game, which was crazy, but a lot of attention immediately came my way. So I had to learn how to get used to it. So the biggest thing to get used to, not only the heat that day, because it was July 3rd or 4th in Tulsa, but Jerry Walker, the Yankee scout, lived in Ada, Oklahoma. He happened to go to the ball game. And I thought the Rangers might like me, but I guess the Yankees liked me more.
And then you were included in a 10-player trade in November of 1978. The Sparky Lyle trade, where he went from New York to Texas. Was it true that George Steinbrenner knew of your 21 strikeout performance and insisted that you were included in that trade partially because of it?
I think a little bit, but what I understand, I guess this is the truth part because George confirmed it with me. I should know the owner of the Rangers. I don't know if it was Mr. Short, but this trade, it wasn't only me. It was Mike Griffin, Greg Jameson, Paul Marabelli, and gosh, I don't know who our fifth one, but that was four of our young guys right there. And then, yeah, I'm probably missing a couple guys, but I'm sorry, Mike Heath. I mean, there was a number of guys in the trade.
Juan Beniquez?
Yeah, thank you. And it started off a series of trades by the Rangers of getting rid of their young pitchers. And it was me and Lenny Barker went next, and Ron Darling, Walt Terrell, Gene Nelson. I mean, John Butcher, Eddie Lynch. I mean, that's a lot of guys that could have been pitching for the Rangers for a lot of years. But they were, back then, young people were just used for bait for veteran presence. And, that was part of the game. But it changed my life dramatically. Yeah.
So you get to the Yankee system, and you did get to make your debut in September of 1979 against Detroit. What do you recall about that game?
Well, we had won the championship in Columbus the night before, and I think I sat out the last month of the season because they shut me down because I was throwing a lot of pitches. I imagine I pitched a lot of innings in those 9 starts that I had, 11 total. Like I said, I'm not sure how many innings I threw, 90 something maybe, or struck out a lot of guys. I mean, I was probably overthrowing, to be honest, but they shut me down. And I didn't think I'd pitch the rest of the year. I certainly didn't think I'd be going to New York. So we won the championship in Columbus, and it was late at night. And by the time they sent us to the airport, and there was 5 of us, Bob Kammeyer, a veteran minor leaguer with the Yankees, Mike Griffin, myself, Paul Marabelli, who I mentioned before, and Rick Anderson, who was our closer. And the Yankees were out of it. And 2 of those, Anderson and Kammeyer, it was like almost like a gift for them because of all their hard work they did in our organization. And the other 3, we were young guys that they probably wanted to take a look at. Unbeknownst to me, we didn't sleep and had to, get there. We flew in about 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I was back at the ballpark by 9:30, all excited, never slept. And Art Fowler came out of the coach's office and said hello, and then said, "Billy wants to see you." Billy Martin. So that was what I first remember. And then Billy saying hello, calling me, "Hey, Dago, how you doing?" He's from Oakland. He Coast League guy. He knew of my dad. He said, "Great to have you. And by the way, you're pitching today." So yeah, I wasn't ready for that. So I started the game that day after that long night.
You came in highly touted. The Yankees had described you as the next Ron Guidry. That had to be a heck of a lot of pressure at that time.
Yeah, that was, I never lived Mr. Rosen, Al. Lived that one down. That was something he should have never done. I understood why he did it, but he was excited because, so what happened in this deal we were talking about earlier, supposedly George kept my name he made this deal with the owner in a bar, maybe during the winter meetings. And he wrote, my name was written down on a piece of paper and he kept it in his pocket. And at the very end of the deal, supposedly George goes, "Oh, by the way, can I get this guy?" To make it look like I was a small piece of the pie or whatever. And the owner didn't know who I was, and he made the deal. Can you imagine that? And I was one of his farm hands, right? And I know it caused a lot of problems the next few years. A lot of our minor league people, Joe Klein, and I I don't want to mention a lot of folks, but a lot of people left the Ranger organization within a year of that happening. And so that's how George got me over there. A bit, Jerry Walker, the scout, told him to do that. Ask for Righetti at the end of it. So, yeah, it was a whirlwind, a few months, without a doubt. But the pressure thing, once you got to New York, you understood what Mickey Mantle went through. Bobby Mercer was the next Mantle. Mantle was the next DiMaggio. Tough to live up to these, and then to be called the next Guidry. And Ronnie, he just won the Cy Young and I think he ended up 28-3 that year by the time the World Series was over. With incredible ERA and 11 shutouts. And I said, oh my God. And I was just hoping to just go up to AAA next year, But now I had the kind of the baseball world's eyes on me a little bit.
When you started, you had uniform number 56, but eventually you had a uniform number that ended in 9, which had significance for Yankee pitchers in particular.
Yeah.
Can you describe the uniform change? And was that part of you being considered one of the next great Yankee prospects?
Yeah, a lot of this I wouldn't know other than this kind of how they did business. 56 was generally a number used for player or pitcher, young guys. They use that number quite a bit. And I said the Yankees, of course, Mr. Steinbrenner approved everything, but Pete Sheehy, the longtime clubhouse man who had been there, I think, since the late 20s, because he was there when Babe Ruth was there. He was in charge of that. And again, I didn't care what I had, right? And but my first chance up there, I had 56. I don't know what I wore in spring training that year. To this day, I couldn't tell you. Maybe it was 56. But then when I got called back up, or excuse me, the next spring I had 39, which was kind of fun because Guidry had 49, Catfish was 29, Nettles had 9, and Maris, so the 9 was a good thing, right? So I got sent back to the minors. Ron Davis took 39 and became Rookie of the Year and a great pitcher. So now there weren't too many 9s left. So, and again, when I finally came up for good in 81, Pete saved 19 for me. So yeah, it is significant, and without a doubt. So I was proud to have that and tried to honor it.
A number of people want to know your impressions of Billy Martin, particularly at the beginning, and he would come and he would go. But what was he like as a manager and his interactions with you in particular?
With me, it was great. In 79, it was a tough year, of course. We lost Thurman, and the team was emotionally drained. Billy had already been through a couple of things already with the World Series. And then he was gone, and he was fired in 78. And Bob Blumen took over, and the team won. So here comes Billy back again. So, I'm reading about it like it's out of a world experience, out of body. Didn't care. I just had to get the other guys out, put a uniform on, pitch. But he was part of your life. But it's like seeing a rainbow or seeing colors for the first time. And I can imagine when you walk in and you see these uniforms and then you see the people in them. And again, back then, the World Series was a really, really big deal. And probably the only games a lot of people did, watch, because unless you watched the one game of the week that was on, to see Reggie and Thurman and, Willie Randolph and Chambliss and all these great players. And then Billy, this character, this person, in a sense, you weren't scared, but you were definitely on edge a little bit. But for him to be able to make you feel comfortable, I guess, by calling me, hey, Dago, and then come here, I want to talk to you, and then talking to you about his life in Oakland. I mean, just quick comments and conversation. It felt like $1 million, right? So I know I know a lot of the other guys didn't, but I didn't have time to think about all that. By the time I got back up to the big leagues for good, he was gone anyway. Bill, there was at least a couple other managers in place. By the time I got Billy back again, that was 83. But I'll tell you a great story, and it was in the great writer Gay Talese, who wrote Honor Thy Godfather, I believe, or Honor Thy Father. I'm not positive which one. But anyway, he invited him in the dugout. We were in Cleveland, and I thought that was odd, but I thought this was the big league. Anything must happen. But this writer was sitting in the dugout in Cleveland during the game. And what happened was we were getting beat by Cleveland. And I wasn't pitching, but I was sitting next to Guidry, and Art Fowler was next to me, and Billy. And something happened during the game. And it's been documented, but I was there and I saw it. But Billy basically told Bob Camhart, and he yelled it out of the dugout, to hit Cliff Johnson in the neck, is what he said. And basically he threw at him, and Cliff heard Billy, so he knew it wasn't Bob doing it. But that started kind of a brawl, and Cliff was going to come into the dugout, and Cliff had just left the team because he got in a fight with Goose that summer. So this was like my first game in the big leagues. And Gay Talese went on to write about this in his book, but he made it sound like Billy paid Bob to do it. But what Billy did was, back then, he gave us all 5 guys that came up to the big leagues $100 to go spend and go get dinner after the game. And which is what we all did. But Gay Talese had written that he paid Bob Camhart to hit Cliff Johnson. No, he gave us all $500 or all $100, and it was all just to go get something to eat. But no, he just flat told him to do it. There was no, and Bob had to do it. He was a rookie, and his first game he started a brawl. So that's absolutely true, and that definitely happened.
You spent 1980 in Columbus, and then you come back in 1981 and have your Rookie of the Year season. You had several highlights that year. You beat the Brewers twice in the division series. But take us to the game you pitched in the World Series against Fernando Valenzuela, as obviously a difficult, not the game you wanted to pitch, but it had to be a particular thrill to play in.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Excuse me. Well, yeah, you say game. It was probably the first game in a couple of years I didn't pitch very well. I didn't know I was going to beat the Dodgers or not, where I certainly didn't think I'd leave in I think the 3rd or 4th inning. I haven't ever watched it again. I don't need to remind myself, but I just remember because I do think about certain. Doesn't matter how many games you win or pitch, you always go back to certain things, right? And this is one game you don't forget. There's only a couple things clear in my mind. I remember this, though. I'll tell you, it's a backstory, which I don't think I've ever told. But before the game, I was in the dugout and going towards the bullpen, and Craig Nettles came running down and grabbed me. And Greg had hurt his thumb. In the game 2, I think, diving for a ball and protecting a ball base hit. And he was done for the series. And he came running out of the dugout and up onto the field as I was walking to the pen. He said, hey, Rag, sorry. I just want to tell you that I didn't understand him at first, but I'd left tickets for my family, and somehow my dad didn't get one out of 20-something tickets. And so they were short a ticket, and my dad said, I'll figure out a way to get in. And this is the fun backstory, I guess. But Nettles, I didn't think anything of it. There's not much I could do. Actually, it wasn't Greg Nettles. Greg Nettles' brother, Tom, was a sports announcer for us. Greg had told Tom to come tell me, because Tom was on the field doing a pregame interview. I almost messed that up. But so Tom's the one that said something. I said, well, go tell your brother that I'm going to pitch. I don't know what to say or do at this point. My dad will have to figure it out for himself. did I worry about it or think about, knowing me, I probably blew it off and didn't think much of it. But I remember that my dad telling me later, or people didn't know what to say to me after that game. But basically, the story got around where Dad somehow got an usher. Dad had played against Lasorda in the Southern League, and he knew Monty Basquell. He knew Red Adams. He knew a lot of guys on his staff. And the Dodgers ended up giving him a ticket, and that's how he got in the game. So I don't know if that was good luck or bad luck, but anyway, I remember getting Davey Lopes 0-2, and to this day I'll never forget it. But instead of throwing a pitch in the dirt or a high fastball or a tougher pitch to hit, I threw a down and away fastball to kind of freeze him, and he hit it off the end of his bat, and he hit the chalk down the right field line. Or I don't know if it hit the chalk, but so immediately there was a double and there's a man on second. So I got caught by surprise, and Bill Russell pushed the bunt between me and Bob Watson, and he was safe. So it was first and third, nobody out, and I got 2 outs. And I got to a point where I was going to pitch around Roncey. I got behind him. And I think that Rick Stroh might have come out and said something to me, but I knew a left-handed Rick Mundy was on deck. I actually tried to throw, and I had good control for a power guy, good enough control where he didn't make mistakes over the plate. And to this day, I basically cut a fastball trying to throw the ball down and away. And Ron was definitely a hooker. And anything down and away, I'd been okay if it was moving away from his bat a little bit. But the darn thing straightened out, and he hit it out. So, yeah, that was the moment. It just happened so fast, and I was down 3-0. But I know we took the lead before I left, but I didn't pitch well. But to this day, it's one of those memories you don't let go of. Definitely remember. Yeah.
What do you remember most about that 1981 Yankees team in general?
Just the pressure that they had fun once the lights were on, so to speak. How they responded as veterans. And Georgia threatened all of them. And I never could understand it. Instead of, this is the first time I was around this. But instead of, these guys have already been to 3 World Series. This will be their 4th. Instead of patting guys on the butt or excited and pumped up for his guy, he almost attacked all his players for not doing well. Dave Winfield wasn't supposed to play because he was 0 for whatever. So, things like that. Reggie, he was gone. He couldn't wait to leave because they tried to embarrass him about his eyes and this and that. He ended up having a great playoff series. He ended up hurting his Achilles tendon in the World Series, but still played. I think he missed the first 2 games. But anyway, and he called the team, if they lose, I know it was in the paper before we flew to LA. He said there was a plan A, a B, and a C. If we won or lost or whatever, I don't know. And a lot of the veteran guys like Bob Watson, Rudy May, Bobby Mercer, Roy White, real veterans of this club. It might be their last chance at this. And there were some other guys that were going to be gone. And, there was going to be this uprooting of the team in terms of, being so old, I guess. And of course it happened because we ended up losing, and all those guys I mentioned were gone, along with, I think, guys like Jerry Mumphrey, excuse me. I know Nettles left, Gossage left. It just started a big cycle.
And it was a decade of a lot of upheaval. You had, we mentioned Billy Martin before, but then, Gene Michael and Bob Lemon and Gene Michael and Clyde King and Billy Martin and Yogi Berra and Billy Martin and Lou Piniella. That's a lot of turnover for one decade as the manager spot.
Yeah, you didn't name the pitching coaches. One year we had 3. Yeah, I felt like we were in the eye of the storm. And we played hard. We stuck together. We had good time together. But every couple of weeks, somebody would get singled out and the pressure would come down for a couple of weeks on every guy. It seemed like had to go through it. So-and-so's not playing well enough and bang, bang, So after a while, you don't want to be jaded as a young man, but young player, but you watched how you just almost couldn't help it. I felt coaches were disrespected, to be honest. Because to me, the coaches were the most respected people in the organizations. The guys that been around the game the longest, stayed in it for not a lot of money, and they did it because they loved it. And a lot of them were great coaches. And so I hated to watch that cycle. And George did it one too many times. The Yogi Berra one, psychologically for a lot of the guys, that was enough in a sense, and guys had it. And it turned from, we can still turn almost anything into good. Once they did that to Yogi, it was, Yogi, we felt like he was the lucky charm of the organization, just this guy, he just wanted to be around all the time. And for him to be hurt like that hurt all of us.
After your Rookie of the Year season in '81, you had some control problems and you got sent back to Columbus. I've read reports that, maybe we were rushing your delivery. What was going on there?
Well, I definitely rushed. Well, I was trying to learn a four-seamer, believe it or not. They changed my grip. I wouldn't say it's not, the Yankees didn't do it. So Don Gullett was hurt and rehabbing and trying to make it back, which he never was able to do. And somebody I really admired and liked a lot. Him and Catfish Hunter both went through a lot with their arms at the end of their careers. And in Donnie's case, he was probably still in his 20s. And I threw a side one day, and he asked me, he goes, "You don't throw a four-seam fastball?" I said, "No, never did. I was always a two-seamer on the outside corner to left or to righties. And if I went across the two seams and, where they come together, go across, my ball would naturally cut into righties and away to left. So I had fastballs on both sides of the plate. And I could keep it down if I needed to. With the four-seamer in my hand, I always felt like I was pitching up, which I did. But he goes, "Boy, when, your four-seamer," he had me throw a few. He goes, "You throw that a lot harder." And I said, "Okay." But pitching back then wasn't thought that way. In fact, if you were a hard throwing guy, you didn't control the baseball, you were frowned on in most pitching circles. You weren't a pitcher. Unless you controlled your stuff, you weren't going to be considered or respected as a pitcher. And I didn't want to be one of them wild guys, but yeah, I got wild. Yeah, and it was long counts. You know what I mean? I'm almost like the way the guys pitch today. Almost exactly. A lot of high foul balls, pop-ups, sliders in the dirt, a lot of takes. And I was exhausted, to be honest. And so I tried it, but I was determined being myself. I said, I'm gonna figure this out. And I figured if I did, I had 3 fastballs. So that's kind of what happened that year. I got a little out of whack trying to throw the ball too hard, I think.
You were back in '83. You won 14 games, but the highlight, of course, was that July 4th no-hitter against Boston. You mentioned that 21 strikeout game that you had that was over 90 degrees. This game was also over 90 degrees, and yet you were still able to stay in it and throw well over 140 pitches.
Yeah, you were paid to pitch, and even in the minor leagues, even in college, to me it was 7 to 9 innings. When I got to New York, Bob Lemon told me 6, and I went, "Mr. Lemon, 6? That's a loss or no decision waiting to happen." He said, "No, get it to Gossage and Davis." I said, "What if they both pitched the night before?" And so in my mind, I'm thinking 8. I was always trying to get the ball to Goose. That was my goal. I think people looked at me, my body, especially when I was 160 pounds and 6'4". I was skinny. Before the Yankee people saw me, I was probably 190 when they finally saw me. But I think I surprised people by my stamina. But I was always a long distance kind of runner, and I took a lot of pride in it. And repetition, I was a repetition kind of guy. I used to bowl a lot, and it was repetition over and over. And anything I did, shooting free throws, things, my brain was just built on repetition. And again, I thought that was the only way you could do sports. And same thing with pitching. And now the batters had a lot to do. I had to get them out, but I was able at a young age to have touch, and I was able to throw a curveball and a slider and a not so good changeup and a moving fastball that got me drafted, got me signed, got me moved up. And as my fastball, my body grew, people started noticing. But yeah, I think I surprised them with my stamina, even in the big league. I didn't tire physically very often. And to me, the legs were everything, and even though they were skinny, I had some stamina in them.
Now that July 4th game against Boston, the Red Sox had been on a real hot streak, and had beaten you several games before you got to that game. Tell us a little about the lineup you were facing and your approach to it.
Well, I knew, they killed us. I scored quite a few runs. So I was just trying to shut them down early and kind of get the momentum back in our dugout and, announce your presence, so to speak. And that's kind of what you did every start anyway. That was your goal. But also the night before, I was supposed to be on the All-Star team, and they said because I was starting the next day, back then, if you couldn't pitch in the All-Star game or give them as a starter 3 innings, you didn't go. You didn't even make the team, which is sad, but that's the way it was. And Ron Guidry actually, before the game that morning, because Billy called me in his office, and Gator didn't go because he had a bad back. And I thought, well, maybe I'll get to go. It didn't change. They just added a different pitcher because they wanted to win those games. Those were big games, and National League had been killing us too. So anyway, I wasn't mad. Everybody thought I was mad, but they asked me my opinion of making it. I said, gosh, I wanted to be on the team. That'd be everybody's dream to be. The All-Star game was, outside of the World Series, was the biggest game there was in baseball, and everybody stopped to watch that. And to be a part of that would have been something, but it didn't happen. And you kind of say to yourself, okay, show them you're an all-star anyway, kind of thing. But you're not thinking about it after, Wade Boggs steps in the box for the first pitch of the game. That was, or whoever it was. I think it was Jerry Remy led off. But those things go away real quick. But kind of grew during the game. Yeah.
And that game was, had some additional variables because it was July 4th. There were some giveaways between innings. Also, home plate umpire Steve Palermo in the 8th inning winds up running into a wall and is down for a period of time. And you're out there in the heat as well. Was there any thought, you think of how games are run today, where sometimes they take pitchers out when they have no hitters. I assume it was that you were going to stay in there at least until you gave up a hit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Same thing with rain delays. They act like your arm goes bad during those rain delays. The only time you should take a pitcher out during a rain delay is if he's got a little bit of a tender arm or something he's dealing with, and you don't want it to tighten up. But if you're healthy and you're young, you just rest you rest an hour or whatever and go back out and pitch. But in this case, it kind of helped me, and it was also intriguing. I was sitting in the dugout because there was 2 outs. Piniella was hitting when that happened. And Newman made an incredible play on that, if anybody ever sees that. In fact, when he came out of the stands after going over those into the box seats, he came out throwing a big popcorn box, came out flying with the ball. And so everybody thought he didn't have the ball, right? But he caught it. but Palermo never saw it because he was down on the ground. I think he tore his knee, by the way. I'm not sure it was broken, but it was definitely torn. So he was on the ground. He never saw it. And Nettles said to me, he goes, who's going to tell Lou that he's out? This is going to be fun. So in a sense, it kind of relaxed us to see what Lou was going to do. And normally, because it took so long, maybe it took the fight out of Lou. And plus he said in the end that he knew I had the no-hitter going. He didn't want to distract from that by creating a scene or anything. But he could have easily argued that because nobody saw the catch. But anyway, that happened. And I don't know, I might have maybe relaxed me a hair. I shouldn't say that. I walked the first hitter the next inning. So Jeff Newman, I walked him on 4 pitches, or I think long at bat, but I walked him.
And you had 4 walks during that game. 2 were of Jim Rice, who was very hot at the time, but otherwise had really strong control. Tell us about that last at bat when Wade Boggs came up, and people remember the strikeout to end it. But you were concerned about Boggs tapping the ball because you tended to fall off toward third base, maybe as a left-handed hitter tapping the ball between you and first base.
No question. I always did. But if I knew I got my slider down and sweeping away, as they call it now, and the way Wade did, he's either going to tap it towards third base in that third base hole, if it's on the plate a little bit, or if I've left it middle in at all, he's rolling it over one way or another. And he had such a flat swing. He had a lot of line drives and hit the ball hard, but that's the one pitch he would roll over, a bad breaking ball, believe it or not, that stayed inside. So after the second out, when Jerry Remy grounded Andre Robertson at second, as I ran to cover first to get, I knew he was going to be an out, but I kept running anyway because I wanted to be sure my legs were right in case I had to do a cover. And I actually did a knee bend. A lot of people said, "Oh, you were really nervous. You were doing knee bends." I said, "No, of course I was nervous, I'm sure, but that was stretching. I was making sure my legs were right in case I had to move off the mound, to go cover first base." That was strictly what it was for. But I didn't expect him to miss the ball by any means. I actually thought I had him struck out on a fastball away on 1-2. And Palermo told Weiniger, because Butch told me, and I think he told it on a podcast, that he wanted me to earn it. He didn't want to just give me I said, earn it. That was my 135th pitch. It was right on the corner. If you look at it, it was probably a strike. But, I just caught my breath and tried to make a better pitch. And I think my breaking ball used to get better as I got tired, believe it or not. Because I tended to overthrow my slider. It was a very hard 88, high 80s slider I would throw. And if you watch that whole game, a lot of them were, you wouldn't call them backed up, because I'd start them away to occasionally leave them in the middle, but most of the time I even throw them hard into righties, and not those breakers down on the ground. But to me, I thought being tired actually helped that last pitch.
Now, with Boggs, you'd be inclined, I would think, to pitch him inside, right? Because of his ability to take it to the opposite field if you pitched him outside. But that 1-2 pitch was on the outside corner. Why did you do that?
Well, because we hadn't done it. I threw him my whole career up to that point, minor leagues, AA, AAA, time in the big leagues, wherever I faced Wade, I always threw him in and up and in. I always wanted to keep him, honest, so to speak. And even that at bat, I think he fouled the ball off his knob. I think that was the first strike I got. Might have been a foul ball off his hand, up and in. But you have to look at it, or I just don't remember. But I think I did that for sure.
Was that last pitch to Boggs a slider or a curveball?
Well, it was basically a breaking ball that, because I was tired and got as hard on top as I could, it went down like a curveball might. So to me, we didn't categorize it's a breaking ball. You want the harder one. It's up to me how to control it. But my slow curve was definitely a lot slower. But in today's, it would be a slurve. But the key was it breaking down. He was a flat bat swinger, so he took pitches from all across the strike zone and shot them everywhere, depending on how he felt that day. So anything breaking down made him tilt the bat and gave you half a chance. This guy's hitting 330 every year, right? So he's going to hit it.
So after that 83 season, when you're a starter, you've already been touted as the next Ron Guidry. You never start another game for the New York Yankees. You then go into a relief role when Rich Gossage signs with San Diego. Whose idea was it to go to the bullpen?
It was I wasn't at the beginning stages. I know it was Yogi. I'm sure it was Jeff Torborg who was still with us. Sammy Ellis, the pitching coach, and it had to be. I don't know if Billy was involved, Gene Michaels. It was the front office. And again, Billy was gone again at the end of that season. He got fired at the end of the 83 season. So Yogi came in, and this is what I know for sure now. They went to Guidry first, and Gator said, no, I don't think I want to do that at this point in my career. Because Gator had helped out in 79 when Goose broke his thumb. Gator closed games for the Yankees during that season. So it was kind of the thing you did. If he could do it, you got to try it, And so Yogi did call me, and I knew when he called what it was about. Because the coaches didn't call you back then, managers, things. So when you got a call like that from Yogi, it wasn't to say hi. I knew they might be asking. In fact, my dad said, they're going to ask you to close. So that's what happened. So as far as I know, it was a little bit of a collaborative thing, but there was it was too late to get a free agent. Goose left late to San Diego. There wasn't that many guys out there. So, they did it within.
You stayed in relief for the remainder of your Yankee career, but there was a lot of consternation in the news media about whether this was the right thing or not. Some thought of you as the analog to Dwight Gooden with the Yankees and so on. And it seemed as though it was a constant debate about whether you should be closing or starting. What did you think at the time over the next few years?
Kind of got used to it. And if Billy was the manager, Billy wanted me to start, and which he became the manager a couple more times. It was a constant debate. Every time there was a new change of manager or a pitching coach, one of the first questions was, is Righetti going to start or relieve? And I'm actually really proud of myself. I mean, I took that as a huge badge of honor when they asked me to close in New York for, Goose had done it, Sparky before him, all the great pitchers that had done it before those two guys. For them to ask me to do that, to me, it felt like, it gave me a lot of confidence, and I didn't want to let them down. I didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't want to let them down. I was going to try it. And I could have easily been a starter again by not pitching well. They would have put me back as a starter, but for them, after a while, I started thinking, I must be getting better at this because they're fighting over it. So that must be a good thing. I must be getting better being a reliever, I guess. So, but it was taxing. I always, because to me, pitching wasn't throwing, and I felt more like a thrower in the 8th and 9th inning, sometimes 7th, sometimes 6th. But those games were fun. When I come in the 5th, 6th inning and finish a game, I could get out of the jam real fast with getting after it. And then I can go into starting pitcher mode and pitch the next 2-3 innings. And I really enjoyed that. But I think I became a worse pitcher closing from what I was trying to become when I was starting. And trying to control and use my touch and feel, and which I knew I felt like I had, but this is what the team needed, and that's what you did.
And you also had different kinds of relievers at that time. Dan Quisenberry with his underhanded delivery. It wasn't all power pitchers the way that we have today.
Bruce Sutter, the White Sox, Tony kind of started that committee thing, mostly because that's what he had. Actually, that's not true. He had a great starting staff too. He shouldn't say that. He had 3 or 4 guys that were 20-game winners, but he went to that kind of staff. And some of your greatest closers were ex-starters. Eckersley, Smoltz, Gossage was a starter in the big leagues. Almost every guy. Suter tried it. I know he didn't become a starter in the big leagues, but that's Raleigh Fingers. To me, who I watched growing up, he seemed to pitch 100 to 120 innings a year. So these were, this is my next thought. From 230 innings, think about pitching 120. So that was what my thought went to.
Your 86 season, you set the record for saves in a season, probably your best year, right?
I think so. It was the craziest. It was the most, gosh, I don't know what you call it. I'll let you label it. Anyway, I was real comfortable. And back then I still wasn't the full closer. There was always somebody with me, Brian Fisher, or Tim Stoddard, or Jay Howe the year before. Somebody always saving another 10, 15 games with me. So it was always being a lefty. I felt like a kind of reliever, which was fine. And 86, I got hot, but right at the end of the half, I had last 3 or 4 games bad. To be honest, I was gassed. But I was leading the league and everything. I got taken to the All-Star game. Our last trip was to Toronto. And we get to Toronto. Of course, it wasn't that long of a flight. Excuse me. And I think it was the Globe and Mail. One of those was the nighttime. The Star, one of them, or the Globe and Mail, one of them was a nighttime newspaper. Anyway, it's in your room. Back then when they used to put newspapers in your room. And really fun. They didn't have a big sports section, but they had a thing on the Yankees and Toronto series coming up. And I'm reading about George, and he's ripping me in the paper again, telling me I'm ruining the team. How can I said, what? I'm leading the league in saves. I got more innings and games pitched than anybody in the league. I thought he'd be happy for me to go to the All-Star game. And he said I was killing the team, and somebody else should be closing. Now, this is before the All-Star break. So I think we had a 3-game series maybe. So anyway, I was in a good mood. And the first game I pitched after that, we had a big lead in the 9th inning. In fact, I think Doug Drabex was in line to get his first win. And it was a big lead, like 6 runs maybe. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I know I'm not getting up, which was odd. Back then I was up every game. But I remember Lou calling down and asking for one of our other relievers to get up, and he couldn't get ready in time. So, of course, I heard that, and Doug, the first 2 guys got on. Now it's nobody out. I don't know if he walked him or not, but there was a couple of guys on right away. By the time I got in, I was in by the next batter. I jumped up, grabbed the ball, maybe threw a pitch, and just put myself in because I wanted to make sure we won this game and help Doug out. So that was dumb. And I got the first guy out, Martinez, the catcher. Buck struck him out with bases loaded. I'm not sure the sequence, but I know Damaso Garcia hit a bouncer up the middle. It stayed in the infield, but we weren't able to make a play. I don't know if we got an out. And I think I hit Garth Orge because I wanted to throw him up and in. He had a tiny little swing and choked up on his bat. So I threw him one high and tight. I think I hit him. And then first pitch to Bell, and he hit a grand slam. And So the worst part about the Grand Slam was it tied the game. So it was at least a 5-run inning because there was 2 guys on when I got there. But anyway, I can't remember for sure. But so I'm real happy, and the place is going nuts. And I got to wait for all 4 guys to tag home plate, and I had my glove out. Don Dinkinger was the umpire. I said, Don, give me the ball, throw me a ball. And umpires can't do that. You can't give a heated pitcher a baseball. Well, in theory, not in theory, by rule, the runners have to all touch home plate. So they didn't want another ball in play, while that's going on. But anyway, he goes, I said, give me a ball, Don. And I probably swore at him at one point because I said it more than once. And this was up near home plate now. I was walking towards him. And he threw me the ball and he goes, well, here's your ball. And I said, really? I said, no, here's your effing ball. And I turned around and I threw it over the fence in right field. And immediately, that's like a double whammy. So the grand slam and then throwing the ball out, the place got super quiet. And the next worst thing happened. Pinella's coming out to take me out. And Lou, if you ever watch him when he came out of the dugout, he had a habit of walking with his head down real fast. And he got that little walk, but he had his head down. He didn't see me throw the ball over the fence. So when he came to the mound, he put his hand out looking for the ball. And I said, I don't have the ball. He goes, where's the ball? I said, it's over the fence. Well, he thought I meant the home run, which was over the fence. He didn't know I threw another one over the fence. And I said, no, Lou, I threw the baseball over the fence. Anyway, I was done. Dinkinger throws me out of the game. I tell him, no shit, I'm out of the game. The manager came and took me out. So this is a debacle. We won the ball game and felt better about that. But I was crushed. I was hurt because the guy that signs our checks, the guy I'm trying to, when it all comes down to it, the guy I'm trying to please wasn't happy with me going to the All-Star game and pitching and giving my heart out to it. And then I went and had a game like that to make him look like he's right. Yeah, that crushed me. And Lou Piniella saved me because George wanted to fine me, suspend me. Players Association said, no, you can't fine him $10,000, all this stuff. And Lou said, he's my guy. I'm sticking with him. And I saved the next, I don't know how many in a row, and broke the record. And so that's why the season, when you asked me, was it my best? I guess that stat-wise it might have been. But emotionally, I'm not sure where it lands. But yeah, it was quite a year.
Now, I want to be mindful of your time, Dave, and take us into the next portion of your career. You do leave New York as a free agent and go to San Francisco, where you stayed for a few years. You were a teammate of Barry Bonds at that point. Take us through the latter portion of your major league career and into a little of how you first got into coaching.
Yeah, towards my end of the career, I already knew. I wasn't hurt, but I knew my arm wasn't the same as I wasn't that old, but pitching wise, I was. By then, I threw a lot of innings and quick time in the bullpen. And by 88, I wasn't feeling right. And again, I wasn't hurt enough where I'm going to go get this looked at or one of those things, but I knew something was not right. But I just learned how to pitch in 89. I had a really good year, not pitching that many games for me, 50. But I saved almost every game that year, 36 out of 38 or 9. And I kind of turned the ball over, used all 4 of my pitches. And, as a free agent, I thought I wanted to go back to the Yankees. I was newly married and we were going to start a family. And I wanted to stay a Yankee. But again, I had this pressure of being a free agent, especially being in New York and being a Yankee and having the career I had up to that point. You got to help the other players in the league too. And I can't be signing. If I have a shot at getting a bigger contract, I should do that to help the next guy, so to speak. And so that was the pressure, what I felt at the end there in New York. and not wanting the Yankee fans really to see me get bad. So they never really did see me get bad, thank God. But I knew I wasn't right. But Al Rosen came calling in San Francisco, and he was the GM there, and offered me a 4-year deal, which I knew damn well I wasn't going to be able to pitch to. But I took it, and I was honest with him about it. I said, I'm not the same guy. He goes, we don't care. We're going to do this. It's not a lot of money. To me, it was. But anyway, that's what introduced me to the National League, which wasn't a smart move for an American League veteran, but it changed my life because of the coaching. Ended up being with the Giants forever. And Brian Sabian had come over from the Yankees as a scouting director, and he knew me well. And so it all led to my second part of the career. And I got to see some great players in the National League and play with maybe the best, who I could argue is the best. Guy like Bonds, got to play with Kevin Mitchell and Will Clark and Matty Williams. And so it was quite a thrill at the end of my career to be in my hometown area and play here. And I know it led to me being a coach here. So yeah, that was kind of the transition.
Now, when you were a pitching coach, what kind of influence did you have on particular pitchers? In other words, obviously, someone like Tim Lincecum has these fantastic years under Jason Schmidt, people like that. To what degree did you feel that your advice was taken by these pitchers and incorporated?
I coached them all different. Back in our day, everybody was kind of coached the same because they really didn't have a lot of guys teaching. They kind of managed the staff more than taught it individually. Occasionally, I'm sure there was guys out there. But yeah, and then because of SABR and Nolan Ryan, the Mets young staff, I came in the next era, the 4 or 5 years later, in this drop and drive, which was really hard to do for me, guy like me. But I had a little bit of it in my delivery, but because we all couldn't get away from it. But I was lucky with all the pitching coaches I had and all the different people that tried to help me, but always was a different advice. I think it helped me in my career as a coach, how to look at different guys and touch and feel and what to add, what to take off, and how to act as a professional and this and that. My number one goal was to keep the pitcher healthy and his career so he could flourish and realize his potential. And if I had a chance to get a guy better, yes, but I never wanted a guy to go backwards. And that was big for me. And so that's how I tried to coach, open-minded as much as I could. And we had a great support. I had Dick Tidrow as our pitching guy in San Francisco, and he loved different deliveries and styles, which I did back for a lot of the 2000s, late 90s. It was a lot of power sinker guys, and we didn't have any of those kind of guys. We were curveball, changeup, control your fastball pitching staffs for years, and I think that's the reason why we only lost a couple pitchers in my 18 years from injury.
I have a question from Mike. He'd like to know,
Sure.
with almost a third of major league pitchers having some sort of arm surgery at some point since high school, what is the fundamental change that needs to occur to prevent these injuries? Pedro Martinez is an advocate of less muscle mass and more pliability, while encouraging organizations not to rush young pitchers, focusing solely on speed and spin. What are your thoughts?
Oh, gosh. It's too dramatic. It's too big now, but the pressure on these kids coming out of, I'm watching it in, what do you call it, travel ball and everything. You got coaches telling these kids they got to throw harder. They're only going to throw an inning or two. What? No, you're pitching today. You're pitching the game. We'll take you out when you can't control yourself anymore or make adjustments. But now it's all about power. Throw as hard as you can, and we'll put somebody else in. You can go to another team next week and this and that. So it's starting young. So the big leagues guys, by the time we get them in the big leagues, their brain's already been formed. So if you don't get to them as an 18 to 21-year-old or 22 out of college, it's really tough to change a guy. It's really because it'll seem so foreign to him. They are so power friendly now that we're trying to change that in our organization. The Giants hired Brian Price to do the big leagues. I was brought back. I've been with the organization, but they brought me back to spring to kind of emphasize that. And we're just tired of people getting hurt. Tampa's got no staff. They lost all 5 starters. Sorry. I had a low battery mode, but anyway, there's way too much of that, not enough touch. There's not enough. The power should only come when your foot's down and you're driving over your top of your front leg. These guys are throwing as hard as they can from back on the rubber. And you see a lot of tall, big, strong pitchers spiking their front leg in the ground and just heaving it. That's why you see anybody that can control the baseball now on both sides of the plate and change speeds, they're carving up hitters now because the hitters are taught to hit the same way they're throwing. But I think you're seeing a little bit of a change right now. People are tired to watch their guys getting hurt. Excuse me.
Another Mike would like to know, what was the biggest adjustment that you had to make going from pitcher to pitching coach?
You know what? Number one, and thank God it helped me. My biggest downfall, and I had a hell of a career, so I shouldn't say it was a downfall, but there's a lot of ways I could have been a lot selfisher, if that's a word. But in our sport, that's when you really say, no, I don't want to pitch tonight, but that word's never going to come out of my mouth. So I did it anyway. And what happens is the teams used to say little things like this, you're closing, you just go down with your best pitch. Well, the best pitch might not be the best pitch to get that hitter out. And the same thing is maybe you shouldn't pitch today because you want to pitch well in 3 days, and you need the rest and things like that. So instead of dying on your sword, which I wouldn't let our guys do, I wanted them to have nothing but freedom of thought when they pitched. Didn't want them to be scared to throw in a baseball, making a pitch in the toughest spot. And they weren't going to get yelled at. But if the scoreboard dictated it and the way they're swinging the bat or the count, and you're not aware of that, then yeah, you're going to hear from me. But in general, I want you to have the freedom to be the pitcher. If you can get this guy out a different way than what we told you, I want the guy to do it. So, and you did that for 18 years, and they know the program, the pitchers understand it. And I think our guys proved it in the playoffs and the way we pitched in a lot of those big games, how relaxed we were, how we didn't walk people, and the way we played. We picked the baseball up too, which was also a key. But a transition, I had to get rid of myself and just think about others. You had to think about every single guy. And when you're a coordinator, like I started out, and you learn 80 pitchers at that time, you take your mind off yourself real quick. Your mind's on every kid. Yeah.
Describe for it what it was like to be the pitching coach for Dusty Baker, Felipe Alou, and Bruce Bochy.
Yeah, looking back in hindsight, how's that? I mean, 3 Hall of Fame guys, right? And I think well over 1,000 wins for each. I mean, gosh, so pretty good. And all 3 asked me to be their pitching coach, which was nice. Dusty being the first one, Brian Sabian's recommendation, and being there for Dusty was exciting, fun. We had a great young team and great attitude, and it took about a year. Well, that first year we won 100 and something games. Dusty and Barry Bonds had joined the team, but our bullpen was dynamic. I was done as a pitcher, and again, it led me up to being a coach for Dusty. We hit it off. He trusted my baseball instincts, I guess, and he offered me a chance to be his pitching coach. And he was totally in charge. He was much like all the managers of all of baseball back then. Managers did everything. Occasionally the pitching coach, when he turned around and asked you, he wanted you to give him an honest answer, but he was going to run the game. Felipe was the same way. They both cared about. Dusty was more people's guy, and which he is. That's his personality. Felipe was very much a businessman. When it came to work, you were supposed to be ready, and that was it, And so I was good with both, and great experience. And Felipe called me up after Dusty left and said, "Would you like to come back?" And I said, "Yeah." And then the same thing happened. Bochy asked me when Felipe would step down. And Bochy called because I was out of a job, and that was quite an experience, course, with Boch. But he truly was. I felt he was more of a pitching guy than actually. I knew he was a manager. He'd done it for years, but he was a backup catcher for years. He understood the catching in the bullpen and doing the grunt work for the backup catchers, and he thought the game as a catcher, and that means he looked through the eyes. He dealt with a lot of pitchers, and you can tell that right away. And the pitchers felt it, and there was immediate confidence that the manager was on their side a little bit, because most managers, pitchers, it was like, give me another one when it came to a reliever, unless it was their favorite guy. Boch took care and cared about every pitcher's arm, and it was different, So they all had three different styles, and all great.
And, which pitcher do you think you had the greatest impact on that you worked with?
I couldn't tell you. Nobody's ever asked me that, actually. You know what? It might be somebody that came up out of our minor leagues that didn't think he was going to be a big leaguer and got some career out of years out of his career that he didn't think he was going to get. But I'm not going to name names because I'd be putting my name. The closest one, the guy, he might tell me to, I'll see him again in a couple of days probably, is Ryan Vogel's son. I had him at 18, 19 years old. He had gotten hurt. We had traded him in 81 for Jason Smith, who turned out to be one of our greatest pitchers. And Vogie missed out on all the great times and got hurt, got released, went to Japan, came back as a 33-year-old, I think, and got the World Series rings 20 years later almost. But so maybe him, maybe Rye.
Of all the San Francisco Giants pennant winning teams that you were on, which was the best?
I think it's the one we didn't win in 93.
Or 93.
93. Okay. Well, if Robbie Thompson, he got hit in the face. Hoffman was pitching for Florida. He was a rookie or second-year pitcher. Broke Robbie's chin or face, basically. We lost a couple starting pitchers. We still won 104 games, or 3. And the Braves beat us by 1. That team would have won. Barry's first team with us, MVP year. We had the best defense in baseball. Braves were great. But we were going to be better than them that year. And then at the end, they got Freddie McGriff and went on a tear that last month. And he was a Yankee, by the way. We traded Freddie McGriff. But Don Mattingly had that job. I don't know where Freddie was going to play. He could have DH'd, I guess. But anyway, I think 93 and, those 2000 to 2004 Giant teams were really good. But what set us apart later on, when we felt like we couldn't get beat, we didn't have real deep teams, and 10 was probably the best team in terms of, if you think about the pitching, but the bullpen was incredible and got better each year. It was so they're almost similar, so they don't stick out. Brian Wilson made us a little different in 10, so that becomes a really unbelievable bullpen. But I think 2002, if Robbie Nin doesn't have a torn shoulder and he's healthy, and we win that World Series, that team was pretty damn good.
I have an assortment of questions. If you're still good on time, Dave,
Yep.
Mike would like to know: did you ever want to be a manager?
Yes and no. You know what? It's gonna be funny, Mike. So again, there's this pressure as a player, ex-Yankee. Pitching guys weren't being asked to be managers. Bud Black had done it. Roger Craig, I remember, came to me and talked to me. He goes, "You need to do it." I said, "Raj, what good is it if I lose? You know, you got to get with the right team's got to ask you to do this." He goes, "You're young, you can." And there was points. I think I didn't feel bad, but I knew. So when Dusty was leaving, it was very dramatic. We lost Game 7, came home. Dusty was gone. He was going to go to the Cubs. He had asked me to go with him. I couldn't do it because of family. But I had somebody in our front office, I should say ownership group, said, "We need you to throw your name in the hat to be the manager." I already knew they weren't going to take me as the manager because Brian Sabian hadn't talked to me about it. To me, he was the boss. And within a couple of days, he had hired Felipe. So that was my first time. And then there was a couple of times in my career, people never want to publicly be turned down. So there won't be a public offer. What they do is they send liaisons, and 9 times out of 10, it's a former teammate of yours or it's a writer that you know. And it's funny how close I was to writers in New York because I had to talk to them so much, and I think I held my own. I got a certain respect out of writers from all over the country, especially back east. But Peter Gammons came up to me one day, mentioned the team. I said, "Peter, why are you asking me that?" You know, he was the GM of that team. Was that, maybe looking for some help to see if I say yes or no. You don't ever want to be turned down publicly, but you want to make sure the guy is interested in being there with your team. And there was a person with the Nationals that asked me the same thing, and they ended up having some great teams. So that was the formal times I was asked, and not so formal, but I never wanted to do interviews. People wanted to find out more about us than to hire a person. I wanted to make sure that it was going to be, "You want me? Can I bring my staff?" Blah, blah, blah. But in the end, it came down, did I really want to go? I knew the way the modern baseball was going. I didn't want to be the manager for the way things were going, because I didn't feel like these teams were on the same path together. I thought analytics was on a path to prove themselves, make their resumes look better, the newfangled whatever, the owners. It just doesn't feel like every team is pulling the same rope. I'd have trouble with that. I'm not a politician. I would get myself in trouble. And I think I talked myself out of it more than wanting to do it. I think I did that. So I'm sorry about the long answer, but that's the closest I can to being honest.
Tom would like to know who your favorite teammate was. Not necessarily the best player, but just the best teammate.
There's a bunch. Robbie Thompson, Mike Pagarillo, Guidry is probably my mentor. The Yankee guys all took care of me and their wives. I was 20. Those guys were all veterans. Closest guy, Cerrone, was probably 27, maybe. So I was a baby. So the wives would look after me, make sure I stayed out of trouble, and the players. And you know what? I used to collect guys. We're all going out as a team, a bunch of guys. I was kind of that way. Shane Raleigh and Jay Howe were close. Matt Keogh, pitchers ended up getting closer, but two of my, with the Giants, it was, Robbie Thompson probably, but I got along with everybody, Trevor Wilson and, Craig Colbert, young players, and it's, Rod Beck. So I felt a responsibility there, but we all just trusted each other. And again, we like to go out together in groups instead of one or two guys. And I don't know. So the first two guys I mentioned stick out: Robbie Thompson and Mike Pagarillo.
Gloria would like to know, would you return to Yankee Stadium for Old Timers Day?
I've been back once. How about that? Mattingly invited me back when they retired his number. I miss Guidry's. I was coaching all those years. So the Yankees wouldn't invite me. And Debbie Timon, who been in the front office forever, she'll occasionally send me out an invite, knowing full well I'm going to say no. But yeah, I miss it. I miss not going back. I missed a lot of seeing the guys. We've lost some people, and I haven't been able to see them, which sucks. So yeah, I hope to do it again. My last time there, I'll tell you a story because I know it sounds stupid, but I go to the fantasy camp, be there at Guidry's and Mickey Mantle's, and Hank Bauer had one. But anyway, the last time I went to Old Timers, so I felt like a Yankee, even though I left. George was mad at me, but I left as the all-time game pitch guy, which I was proud of. The saves are one thing, and I did that, but I was just proud to pitch every day for that team for those 10, 12 years. And when right before the game, the Old Timers, they told me to go over in the third base dugout, the opposing team's dugout, and they were going to introduce me from there. And I went, what? All my career, I sat there and watched, not Lazari, but Vic Raschi and Roger Maris and Mantle and all these guys. Every day I'd take my camera and watch it. Making old timers thing was a big deal to me. And they sent me, and we were playing Kansas. I was in the Kansas City dugout over there on the visitor side, and they introduced me over there. I tipped my cap. I went in there. That was it. I showered and found my wife upstairs, and I left. And that was the last time I've been back. That's stupid, I know, but yeah, that's why they did that. I don't know. Well, Sparky was on the other side. So what they wanted to do, I was a young guy still, and I guess could still throw pretty good at 40. And Reggie was playing. They wanted me to pitch against Reggie. And he embarrassed him, strike him out or whatever. And so I think that's why I was over there. But it was too late. I was gone. I was half back. I was back at the hotel probably by then. But anyway, so I'd like to go back.
Deb would like to know, do you have a favorite catcher?
No. We were always taught, I didn't care who caught me, could care less. Rick Cerrone was probably my, first one that I, hit on all cylinders with, right? Weiniger would call my curveball, and he caught me a little different. So did Barry Foote. Ron Hasse was fun to catch, but when I was a starter, it kind of meant something who caught, but not that much with me. Once you became a reliever, I didn't know who was catching the ninth. A lot of times it was going to be your best defensive catcher if you had a lead in the ninth. And the guy wasn't a great hitter. He probably would get pinch hit for somewhere along the line, or pinch ran for. And the defensive guy would be in there. Joel Skinner might be in there, or, I don't know. But true to a lot of guys, I know that. But probably those first two, Weiniger and Cerrone. I didn't get to throw to
You mentioned Thurman Munson earlier. Dennis would like to know if you ever pitched to Thurman Munson in spring training.
Yes. And gosh, it's one of the last conversations I have, because I didn't make the team, of course, was I was sent out early. They knew I wasn't going to be on the team. So anybody on the roster, they have a certain date that you have to go down to the minor leagues. And before I left, Thurman came over and told me to, keep my head up, get ready, and I'll see you at the end of the year sometime. He goes, in fact, I know he said it publicly. He said it to me. He goes, I'm gonna catch a few games the next couple of years, and that was it. But he goes, I'll catch you in Gator. That's what he would tell me. And didn't happen, unfortunately.
You mentioned a little about analytics, and I am mindful of wrapping things up soon. What kind of a challenge is it to be a pitching coach in this era of analytics, and how do you do it?
You can't, until you stand there and watch it every day, you can't believe what happens in the Giants organization. I'm telling you is fact. There was I don't know if it came out verbally or written, but our coaches were told not to coach and teach deliveries and basically help the pitchers. These are 17 to whatever, 30-year-old guys, our cream of the crop, whatever, our youngest signees. It was you're only going to be there to support the analytics. And these kids, when they throw a pitch, they would look back at a camera and an intern and somebody that's never played before. And some are awesome people and really neat, but they're not going to help them how to throw the pitch better. But they weren't supposed to tell them that. Their job is to tell them the spin rate, the shape, but not how to make it better. In other words, how to protect your body. It's very dangerous when you hear somebody tell another person that, hey, we need to change your grip on this and that. When you change your grip, you could potentially hurt a pitcher. So before you do that, you got to make sure the pitcher's got the right delivery to do what you want and the right arm angle. And what they're doing is they're getting guys to throw the ball. A lot of them high 3/4 over the top. That's why you're getting a lot of muscle pulls, a lot of lap pulls, which never happened before. And you're having guys just spin around on the mound, trying to come up with shapes. They call them, back then we just call them, you drop your arm down and, make a pitch, throw a breaking ball away. But now so these pitching coaches are standing there. They have to listen to that. And now they have to try to help the player. But for about 5 years, the players were just locked in on these numbers and their pitch shape because their agents are getting them. Their coaches aren't allowed to talk anything to them about pitching, how to deliver the baseball properly and finish a proper delivery. And they're frustrated. And the only reason why they're doing it is because they want to feed their family. And you have some guys that speak out and they get fired. It's starting to come along where every team's tired of losing pitchers. And they're not developing. They're going backwards. They're coming to the big leagues. They can't throw 3 innings. It's embarrassing. And it starts at the very bottom, the grassroots. And so who didn't love sabermetrics, numbers? That I learned how to read the newspaper because of batting averages and RBIs. And who knew about an earned run average at 7 years old? But I could tell you that. And I learned how to add and subtract, how to read a paper because of numbers. We all love those things, but they should be supplemented. The pitching, delivering the baseball properly, hiding the ball from the hitters is a big deal. They don't teach that anymore. And it should be a coexistence, but it's not.
What is your favorite on-field memory?
It's winning. It's winning the first World Series in San Francisco history. There's nothing to ever compare. And to do it against the team, Texas Rangers, who drafted me, it was really kind of odd and eerie. But yeah, I mean, that's team hard work and watching organizations go through a lot of pain. Willie Mays and McCovey, Barry Bonds, and a lot of miss outs. Dusty Baker, and we can go on and on. The Giants, a lot of heartbreak, and to finally get that in 10, it's got to be tops. Whether it sticks out enough or not, it's got to be.
How would you like people to recall your career in the major leagues as player and coach?
You know what? I played, it's a weird thing, but I think my dad kind of taught us, you don't play for a paycheck, but you honor it. In other words, they're signing their name to pay you. They trust you enough. And we say not to embarrass them. Don't embarrass us on the field, so to speak, and off the field, but be a professional and count on somebody. Somebody you can count on. I wanted to be counted on. I wanted those older Yankee guys to go, this kid's all right. We got, we trust them. And that's the way I felt about in my career. And as a coach for Brian Sabian, our owners, Dusty, Felipe, Boach to take care of those pitchers with me and Mark Gardner, Billy Hayes, our catching guy. Just be trusted. I want people to feel like they trusted me. And, don't claim to be the best at anything. Don't care, because I was just trying to do what I knew was right. I never fiddle with a pitcher. I still don't. But if I know something's wrong, I say something, so it won't keep going. There's a lot of history of managers letting the player cut himself so they don't have to do it. In other words, if they know a guy's going bad, but they don't want to have to tell him, they want the player to tell himself by going out and getting embarrassed, then they can get rid of him. The player knows it and he goes home. I want to get there before that player gets embarrassed. That's my job.
Dave Righetti, we want to thank you for being with us tonight and being so gracious with your time. We just so very much appreciate you being with us for this SABR Oral History.
Yeah, thank you very much for thinking of me and asking me to do this. And the guys you've had on before are pretty cool. And a lot of those guys are the ones I wanted to play with. Yeah, so thank you.
And I will wish Dave good night and thank everyone for being with us.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Good night.